Yeah, next up, Chris Rosser has shared a Q&A on his Discord. I talked to him about it, and he said he was happy to let us share it on the news. So we've got, we're going to talk about the Q&A he had with Walksnail, which is kind of enlightening for some of the things that we've heard so far moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the whole Q&A will be down in the video description if you'd like to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
As always, we presented that for you. However, basically, some of the interesting things I thought, they talk about how, as they said before, they come out of CADX US. They have a 60-person R&D team. Not sure where that number is coming from. That seems very high, right?
That's a big number.
Seems really high.
Number. Yeah.
Yeah. You think they mean like testers, or do you think they mean like
that makes actually I didn't know how to interpret it. That makes sense. How many engineers does Orca say they have on staff?
Yeah.
Do they say?
I'm not sure. I can't remember, but it wasn't. I don't think it was 60. That we're doing this work,
Right. And when Orca says we have X number of engineers, I think they're probably not fudging the number. When they say R&D staff, maybe they're counting test pilots. That I could see them getting to 60 because they've got 20 sponsored pilots or whatever. They do say
with unique experience in encoding, decoding, and image processing. So they suggest they're like specialized employees, but I don't know. It is interesting. Some of the other things they talk about here are they said that Fat Shark manufactures the avatar goggles for them.
Yeah, that I don't. Fat Shark. I asked Alan Evans, the the vice president at the time of Fat Shark, and he said definitively, I was like, "What's the deal with these avatar goggles?" Because this was, and he said, "We don't make them." Definitively, he said they are not made in our factory, and I was like, "Well, clearly they're it's clearly the same mold." And right. And he was like, yep, interesting. And the impression that I got was that their story was that somehow Walksnail had gotten access to the injection mold, whether they got the CAD files or the actual factory made the shells for them. Like if somebody from Walksnail called up the factory and said, "Hey, can you run off another 1,000 shells for us?" And they're like, "Sure, buddy." And didn't realize, I don't know, that it was like Fat Shark's IP. But he definitively said they don't make them. And the implication was that Walksnail is manufacturing them with identical molds somewhere else.
I gotta say, sure does make a lot more sense that Fat Shark would be making them. And I don't see any reason Walksnail would lie about it. And I see reasons Fat Shark would lie about it. So to me, I definitely believe this more than him. 100%. 1,000% more. They even say here, Dominator and Avatar goggles are products of our cooperation. When we talked about this, we talked about how confusing it was, and it didn't make a lot of sense. But you know what makes a lot more sense? That Fat Shark doesn't own anything what they say they do, and they just make both sets of goggles.
I agree that makes more sense.
Our goggles are open to any company. Our goggles are open to any company. We have a lot of other customers working on different products that will come out soon.
But you go to a CEO, you go to a VP, and they're going to not necessarily tell you the 100% whole truth because they have a design in mind, an end in mind for the outcome of what they want you to think and believe about their company, and they want to shape that. But they're not going to just lie to you, because if they do and they get caught in a lie, that's bad for them. They lose credibility. And so for him to have said, "We don't make those goggles, they are not made in our factory," and I should go back and I should check the quote. I'm pretty sure that was because I pressed him on it, and now Walksnail says, "Yeah, Fat Shark makes those." It's just so inconceivable that the communication would be this disjointed to me.
Yeah. I mean, all I'm going to say is so far what we've had is we basically had, I don't know how you want to put it, but basically to me, I've seen Fat Shark be coy and bullshitty, and Walksnail just post real things over and over again. Fat Shark is coy and bullshitty and dodges questions and doesn't tell you answers and doesn't want to talk about Walksnail and doesn't say who a partner is and anything. And Walksnail posts about who they are and says they have the goggles and says they have the VTXs and tells you exactly what it does and posts all the firmware and communicates with users. So to me, when I look at the two sets of pieces of information, why would I believe the company that has been coy and weird with me instead of the company that cares about the technology and that like,
and
you know what I mean? Like
Fat Shark's a sort of tone, and I don't want to attribute specific quotes to them, but the sort of general tone and attitude that I have gotten from Fat Shark has been, it's so hard to work with this company. We're doing our best. You know, they're not, we're trying to do this launch, like they tried to do the launch and the Walksnail website wasn't up. And Fat Shark was like, yeah, our partner wants to remain private. And then the Walksnail website went up and Alan was kind of like, he kind of had an eye-rolly vibe. And was like, here's the website. And it's like, you know, we're trying to do this launch and this other company is not really playing ball and they're launching their website and they weren't supposed to. And I thought they were secret. And they've got this frustrated feel like Walksnail's jerking them around. But maybe that's actually all bullshit, is what you're suggesting.
I mean, I think it's more bullshit than we expected because, again, like I've said 100 times, and I will continue to harp on, they presented VTXs and cameras labeled as Walksnail. You can't, you cannot play coy and then not paint over the Walksnail logo on cameras. Right. Like there's a level of confusion and frustration, and you don't get to have both ways. That's the way I look at that. I think they fucked up. They were annoyed they fucked up. And in reality, they fucked up something that everyone was going to find out anyway and didn't matter. And they were annoyed that not only did they fuck up by putting shit on the camera, but then Walksnail came out and told people. And you know what? As far as I know, Walksnail came out and told people because people were posting pictures of the Walksnail cameras from Rampage.
Right. Like, clearly it's Walksnail.
Yeah.
For Walksnail to say, you know, Fat Shark is our customer and our partner, that, if that's not just a translation issue, that casts the relationship of Fat Shark and Walksnail as not one of sort of peers co-developing the goggles, but as Walksnail sort of makes this thing and Fat Shark is buying it from them.
Well, we know that, right? So that's the idea, right? Is that that's like this all lines up with exactly what we think happened, which is that Walksnail makes the board. Fat Shark makes the goggles.
We know that.
Walksnail sends boards to Fat Shark to make the goggles.
We know that.
The only thing Fat Shark claims doesn't happen is that they don't make the Avatar goggles. But it sure makes a lot of sense that they would also make the Avatar goggles in the same place with the same molds and the same equipment and the same eyepieces and the same setup and the same lines.
I'll say this. Fat Shark and Walksnail, whichever one of them is not communicating along the party line, the other one needs to go slap them and be like, get in, you know, whichever, because if I'm Fat Shark and Walksnail is out there giving misinformation, or if I'm Walksnail and Fat Shark is out there giving misinformation, I'm going to be pissed.
What damage does it do to Walksnail, though, when Fat Shark gives misinformation? To me, it makes Fat Shark look worse and Walksnail look better. So to me, if I was Walksnail, I would just do what I'm doing. Especially when I have a language barrier and I can't be sure exactly what they're saying. You know what I mean? Like, I would be erring on the side of like, stay the course, explain exactly what the relationship is, don't make any bullshit up, and just explain. And that's what seems to be happening. I mean, there is definitely some like fluff, like any company would do, right? As we go through these questions, there's definitely fluff, but there's also like somewhat direct answers, and there's also like, I don't know, like I'm not saying Walksnail is like the god or whatever. I'm just saying that like the way they're communicating seems a lot more clear to me.
I agree.
Than Fat Shark. Yeah.
Brundlefly in the Discord, I agree completely. Brundlefly says, if Walksnail makes a video receiver module that works on third-party goggles, then we know who wears the pants in the relationship, because Fat Shark would never do that. And I agree. I've said that. Okay. Any other interesting information from Chris Rosser's Q&A?
There's quite a bit in there. So one thing they said was, let's see. So they talk about working on standalone VRX will be released October, November. Fixed latency mode is in the next version of firmware, maybe. I don't know if they mean next or just the next, how that translation happened. You know, basically what's the timeline for 1S VTX? They hope they can finish by October or November. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff,
The
basically in
fixed
here.
fixed latency mode.
Yeah,
They're
fixed
claiming they
latency
can do
mode.
fixed latency mode. If they can, that's huge.
That's what they
I mean,
say. We don't know what it's going to look like, but that's what they say.
well,
So.
I don't know how technically you can do a fixed latency mode if you're doing H.265 encoding. I don't. It's not. I mean, you could you could do various things
right?
to bring the latency down.
Right. Well, I don't know. That's not true, right? Because you just decide how much to compress. Like, there's got to be some compression factor.
Do you just do 100% iframes, essentially?
Yeah. I think there's some factor there, I would imagine, where you're like deciding how much to compress based on like available time left. I don't know anything about it, but I imagine there's some buffer there where you could live in. But I have no idea. I just want to point out, they say again in another comment, who manufactures the Walksnail goggles? Are they a shared design with Fat Shark? Designed and manufactured by Fat Shark, co-developed by Walksnail.
Yeah.
So they're staying on that manufactured by Fat Shark train.
Okay. That's what they say.
And then on the last set of questions, I do want to point out, which I think is funny. This is probably translation, but it's funny. They say, "Is the Walksnail goggle 6S compatible?" In the last set of
the third
ones
one.
there.
Yeah. Thank you.
And they say yes, but be careful. So I'm not sure what that means. That's hopefully translation.
Yeah.
They also say, how long has the product been in the making? About 1 year. But we had heard development was like longer than that in other places. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. The 6S question, Eric Toft in the Discord is commenting that that's a difference between the Walksnail and the Fat Shark goggles. That the Fat Shark goggles are rated for 5S, the Walksnail are rated for 6S. In my opinion, that's just a paper thing.
But almost Fat Shark. I don't know if anybody dove in and looked at the board though. But
yeah, we know that people have run the Fat Shark goggles on 6S and not blown them, and other people have blown them. Yes. And so my guess is that the regulator is rated for, I don't know, like 26 volts or 27 volts or something right on the line. And so Fat Shark was like, look, we're going to call it 5S and play it safe. And Walksnail was like, YOLO. But I don't think that points to the goggles being, I'm like really certain that the hardware is the same on the inside. That's my I'd bet a substantial amount of money that the hardware is the same on the inside. But okay. Well,
all right.
That